The sky over Earth had always been clear, a symbol of peace and prosperity. But everything changed when the first alien ship appeared on the horizon. It was enormous, far bigger than any ship the humans had ever seen. People on Earth had no idea what was coming. The aliens did not ask for peace. They came with weapons powerful enough to tear entire cities apart. The first strike came without warning. It hit the largest city on Earth, and within minutes, it was reduced to rubble. There was no time to prepare. Earth's best defenses, military forces, and weapons were no match for the invaders. The aliens had advanced technology, making them nearly unstoppable. The people of Earth fought back, but they were overwhelmed. The shock was so great that many could not even react in time. Humanity's strongest leaders, those who could escape the chaos, tried to make a plan, but it was too late. The alien forces were everywhere, tearing through the cities, destroying everything in their path. The Earth's atmosphere was filled with smoke and fire, and the once beautiful planet was now a battlefield. Many humans died that day, but a small group managed to survive. They were forced to flee into the unknown parts of the galaxy. The survivors were scattered to distant star systems. Some went on small ships, others on larger, older spacecraft. They had no plan, no safe place to go. Only the hope of survival pushed them forward. They left behind families, homes, and a planet that had once been the center of everything they knew. As they drifted away from Earth, the survivors felt the weight of the loss. It was as if the galaxy had turned its back on them in the far reaches of space, where no one knew Earth's name. The survivors looked for a place to call home. They had no idea how vast the galaxy truly was, but they knew it was dangerous. The stars above were no longer a symbol of hope. They were a reminder of their fight for survival. As they looked to the future, the survivors knew that humanity could never return to the life it had before. Everything had changed. The war had taken it all. Some survivors found shelter on unknown planets. Some joined alien races who offered help, but none of them truly felt safe. The alien invaders had destroyed their home and left them with nothing. But there was one thing the humans still had. Hope was the only thing that kept them alive. The survivors knew that they had to fight back. They could not let their species be wiped out. Across the galaxy, whispers of the fallen Earth spread. Aliens spoke of the humans who had once ruled the stars, now scattered and defeated. Some believed the humans were finished, that they would never recover. Others said that humanity's spirit was unbreakable, no matter how far the survivors had fled. They carried with them the strength of their ancestors. But as the survivors tried to rebuild their lives, they faced another challenge. The aliens who had attacked Earth were not done yet. The galaxy was filled with enemies, and the humans knew they had to be ready. They were no longer the mighty force they once were, but the fire inside them was not gone. The survivors would find a way to fight back, no matter the cost. The human survivors made a promise to each other that they would never forget what had happened. They would never forget the world they lost. And as they looked to the stars, they vowed that one day they would return to Earth. They would rebuild, reclaim what was theirs, and show the galaxy that humanity was not so easily defeated. And so, the survivors moved forward, one step at a time. They knew that the road ahead would be long and dangerous, but they also knew that they were not alone. The human spirit had survived the first strike, and it would survive whatever came next. As the survivors of Earth scattered across the galaxy, they learned quickly that safety was not something they could find easily. Every corner of the galaxy seemed to be either too far to reach or filled with danger. In the first months, the survivors were lost, not only physically, but also emotionally. They had no home, no place where they could belong. Each ship, each small group, had its own story of loss. Some had lost family, others friends, but all had lost Earth. But amidst the confusion, something incredible happened. On one of the farthest planets, a group of survivors stumbled upon something ancient. It was a hidden weapon, buried deep within the planet's surface, forgotten by time. The planet had been abandoned long ago by a race of beings no one had ever heard of. Its technology was unlike anything the humans had ever seen, and it seemed to hum with a strange energy at first. The survivors did not know what to make of it. They thought it might be a trap, or perhaps just a relic from the past. But one thing was clear: the weapon was powerful, very powerful. It seemed to contain energy capable of leveling entire cities, but its true purpose remained a mystery. It was unlike any technology humanity had ever developed. There were no instructions, no guides, just the machine itself. Survivors didn't know whether to fear it or trust it. Captain Riley, who had once been a leader in the Earth Defense Forces, was one of the first to see the weapon. As he stood before it, his hands shook. He wasn't sure if he could believe what he was seeing. It was beautiful in a strange way. The design was sleek, smooth, and unlike anything they had ever built. It was almost as if it had been waiting for someone to unlock its secrets. But Riley knew that this could either be their salvation or their doom. "We need to be careful," Riley said to the survivors gathered around. "This weapon could be the key to fighting back, but it could also destroy us if we're not careful." But the survivors were desperate. Every day, the alien invaders grew stronger. They could feel the pressure, the constant threat of destruction. Some of them argued that they should take the risk and activate the weapon. Others, like Riley, knew they needed to understand it fully before using it. They had already lost everything once. How could they risk losing it again? There was one woman in the group, Dr. Sandra Fields, who had been a scientist back on Earth. She was one of the few who truly believed they could unlock the weapon's potential. She spent hours studying its structure, its energy, and the symbols that covered its surface. Slowly, she began to see patterns, a map of sorts that hinted at the weapon's true purpose. It's a weapon. But it's also a defense system, a shield of sorts. It can protect us, but only if we understand how to use it. The survivors were divided. Some of them wanted to try activating it immediately, while others felt it was too dangerous. Tension was high, but time was running out. The alien invaders were not just attacking planets. They were systematically wiping out entire species, leaving nothing behind. The galaxy had become a dangerous place, and the humans knew they couldn't afford to wait any longer. In a meeting with the survivors, Riley made a bold decision. "We don't know how long we have left," he said. "We'll activate the weapon, but we'll do it carefully. We need to know if it's really the key to our survival, or if it's just a relic from a forgotten time." That night, the survivors gathered around the weapon. The atmosphere was thick with fear and hope. As Dr. Fields carefully input the codes she had discovered into the device, everyone held their breath. "Die!" The machine hummed to life, its energy pulsing as the lights on its surface flickered. For a moment, it seemed like nothing was happening, but then the ground beneath them began to shake. A bright light burst from the weapon, illuminating the sky above. The survivors stepped back, shielding their eyes from the light. It felt like the power of 1,000 suns had been unleashed in an instant. The air was thick with energy, and it seemed as though the stars themselves were bending toward the planet. When the light finally faded, survivors stood in stunned silence. The weapon had done something, but what exactly? Dr. Fields stepped forward, checking the readings on her portable device. Her face was a mixture of confusion and awe. It's working," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "This isn't just a weapon. It's a beacon, a signal." The survivors exchanged looks. A beacon? A signal for what? Riley's mind raced. "Are you telling me it can call for help?" "I think so," Dr. Fields replied, "but we don't know." From where or who will come, for the first time since the war began, the survivors had a spark of hope. They didn't know who would respond to the beacon, or if it would even work. But they knew one thing. They had just taken the first step toward taking back the galaxy, and perhaps, just perhaps, humanity was not as scattered and lost as they had thought. The survivors had never felt so alone. They were scattered across the stars, each group in different parts of the galaxy, with no communication between them. They didn't know if any other humans had survived or if they were the last. They didn't even know if they were the last ones left in the galaxy. Captain Riley and Dr. Sandra Fields knew that they had to do something. But what could they do when they had no allies, no power, and no way to fight back? The weapon they had uncovered was powerful, but it was only a piece of the puzzle. They needed more than just a weapon. They needed allies. The survivors began to search for other human colonies, hoping that someone had escaped the destruction. They traveled across many star systems, but every planet they visited was either abandoned or under alien control. They began to lose hope, but then, in a distant part of the galaxy, they found something they had never expected. Another group of survivors. This group was led by Commander Arya, a woman who had been a leader of one of Earth's military outposts. Before the invasion, her group had been hiding on a remote planet for months, evading the aliens. When Riley and Fields arrived, they found an organized group of survivors, well prepared and ready to fight. They had been living in secret buildings, small ships and weapons, preparing for the day they could strike back. Commander Arya was skeptical at first. She had heard the whispers about the scattered humans, but she never thought she would meet any of them. She didn't trust easily, and after what had happened to Earth, she was cautious. But when she saw the weapon that Riley and Fields had discovered, her attitude began to change. "Where did you find this?" Arya asked, eyeing the weapon with a mixture of awe and suspicion. "We don't know exactly," Riley said, "but we believe it could help us fight back. We can't do this alone. We need allies." Arya thought for a moment, then nodded. "We've been waiting for someone to come. You're not the only ones who've been hiding. There are others." Survivors learned that Arya's group wasn't alone. Across the galaxy, hidden in remote corners of space, there were other human survivors. Some had joined alien factions, while others had formed their own resistance groups. They had all been waiting for a sign, a spark of hope to ignite a new beginning. But there was a problem. The alien invaders had grown stronger since the first attack on Earth. They were hunting down humanity wherever they could find them. And their fleets had grown even more powerful. Humanity's scattered groups didn't have the strength to take on the aliens alone. They needed to form an alliance, but could they trust the other survivors? Could they work together to form a united front against the invaders? Riley and Arya spent hours discussing the future. They knew the odds were stacked against them, but they also knew that they couldn't give up. They agreed that the survivors needed to work together to unite the scattered pieces of humanity. They began sending out signals, hoping to reach more survivors. Slowly, more groups began to respond. A human group from the star system of Deltanine answered the call, followed by a group from the Outer Rim, near the edge of the galaxy. Each group had its own story, its own struggles, but they all shared one thing in common: they wanted to survive. The alliances were fragile at first. There were disagreements, mistrust, and fears of betrayal. Some of the groups had different goals, different values, and different ways of doing things. But over time, the leaders began to understand that they had no choice but to work together. The enemy they faced was too powerful, and if they didn't unite, they would all fall. The first real test came when one of the alien fleets appeared near one of the human colonies. The Alliance's first mission was to protect this colony at all costs. The survivors knew that if they failed, they would lose everything. The battle was fierce. The alien ships were massive, and their weapons were devastating. The humans had limited ships and weapons, but they fought with everything they had. They used their knowledge of the terrain, their small numbers, and their desperation to their advantage. The battle raged for hours, and just as it seemed like the humans were going to lose, the unexpected happened. Reinforcements arrived. A fleet of human ships, led by Commander Arya, arrived just in time to turn the tide of battle. They had joined forces with an alien faction that was also fighting against the invaders. Together, they destroyed the alien fleet, protecting the colony. The victory was small, but it was significant. It proved that humanity could fight back if they worked together. It also showed the survivors that they had allies they could trust, and that they weren't alone in this fight. As the survivors celebrated their victory, Riley and Arya knew that this was just the beginning. There were more battles to fight, more enemies to face, but they also knew that humanity's hope was stronger than ever. They had found each other, and they had found the strength to fight back. The victory over the alien fleet was just a small step in humanity's long road to recovery, but it was a sign of something much bigger. The survivors now had proof that they could win. They could stand up to the invaders, and together they could be stronger than they ever thought possible. The alliance was growing, and each new victory brought more hope to the scattered humans who had once felt so lost. But the alien empire was not easily defeated. Their fleets were vast, and their resources seemed endless. They had learned from their mistakes and were preparing for a much stronger retaliation. As the days passed, the survivors knew that the battle ahead would be even harder. Riley and Arya, now working together as the leaders of the human resistance, spent long hours planning their next move. The weapon they had discovered, while powerful, was not enough on its own. They needed more resources, more ships, and more allies. They couldn't afford to wait for the enemy to strike again. They had to take the fight to them. The first step in their new strategy was to strike at the heart of the alien empire. The planet where the aliens had originally come from was heavily guarded, but Riley and Arya knew that it was the key to winning the war. If they could take out the Central Command, they would cripple the enemy's ability to fight. The plan was risky, but it was their only chance. As they prepared for the mission, the alliance grew stronger. The different human factions, once hesitant and distrustful, now worked together like a single force. The survivors from Deltanine had provided much-needed supplies, while the group from the Outer Rim had brought new technology and weapons. For the first time, humanity was truly united, and it was a powerful sight to see. The mission to strike at the heart of the alien empire began with a covert operation. A small group of ships, including Riley and Arya's, slipped past the alien defenses and entered the enemy's home planet's atmosphere. The humans moved quietly, relying on their knowledge of the galaxy's dark corners and their skills in stealth. But the aliens were not unprepared. As soon as the humans arrived, the enemy launched a counterattack. The small group of ships found themselves surrounded, but they didn't turn back. They fought with all the strength they had, using their small size to their advantage. The battle was fierce, but the humans pressed forward, determined to reach their goal. Inside the enemy's planet, the Central Command was heavily guarded. It was a place of immense power, and Riley knew that if they could break through, they would have a chance to destroy the alien empire's leadership. As they infiltrated the planet's surface, they encountered alien soldiers, but they're new. Weapons and teamwork gave them the edge. It wasn't easy, and many of the survivors were injured, but they continued to push forward. Riley and Arya led the charge, their determination matching the fierce spirit of the humans who followed them. They knew that this mission could end in disaster, but they also knew that they had no choice. If they didn't take down the enemy's leadership, they would never have a chance to win. As they reached the Central Command, they were met by the alien leaders, who were prepared for the attack. The final battle had begun. The humans fought with everything they had. It was a battle not just for survival, but for their future, for the future of Earth, and for the hope of rebuilding everything they had lost. The enemy was powerful, but humanity was stronger. They fought with passion, with rage, and with the belief that they could win. For hours, the battle raged. The alien leaders fought fiercely, but the humans were relentless. They pushed forward, step by step, until finally, the Central Command was within reach. With one final push, they broke. Through the enemy's defenses, the alien leaders were captured, and their control over the galaxy was shattered. The survivors had won a major victory, but it was far from over. The war was still raging across the stars, and the alien empire would not fall easily. But for the first time in years, humanity had something the aliens didn't: hope. They had shown the galaxy that they could fight back, and that they would not stop until they had reclaimed everything they had lost, as Riley and Arya stood on the battlefield. Looking out at the wreckage of the enemy's command center, they knew that the war was far from over. But they also knew that they had taken the first real step toward victory. They had proven that the human spirit could not be broken, and that the galaxy would soon learn that humanity was not something to be underestimated. The rising tide of war was just beginning, and humanity was ready to face whatever came next. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. Though the human resistance had struck a blow to the alien empire, but the aliens were not about to give up so easily. As the survivors gathered on the newly captured planet, They knew that this victory would only be the beginning. The aliens were regrouping, and they would come back with everything they had. Riley and Arya stood together, looking out at the horizon. The skies were clear, and the once feared alien warships had been destroyed. The alien leadership was in their hands, but their empire was vast, and there were many more battles to fight. The humans had made a powerful statement, but now they had to hold on to their victory. "We've made our mark," Riley said, his voice calm but filled with determination. "But we have to be ready for what comes next." Arya nodded. "We can't afford to rest. The aliens will want revenge, and we're in their sights now more than ever." The survivors were not just fighters, they were people who had lost everything. Families, homes, and entire worlds had been destroyed. Each victory brought them closer to reclaiming what they had lost, but they also knew that their journey was not over. They had made allies, formed alliances, and taken back a piece of the galaxy. But the war was far from won. The alliance was stronger than ever. The survivors who had once been scattered, unsure if they would ever see each other again, were now united in purpose. The different human factions had set aside their differences, working together as one. The new alliance was stronger, smarter, and more prepared than they had ever been. But even with this newfound strength, they faced an enemy that was relentless, a force that would stop at nothing to crush them. The human fleet had grown, and the survivors were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their future. The weapon that had been discovered on the distant planet had become a symbol of hope. It was a beacon to all the humans who had scattered across the stars, and it was a signal to the aliens that humanity was not finished. The galaxy was still alive with the sound of humanity's resistance, but there was one question that weighed heavily on Riley and Arya's minds. How long would it take for the aliens to regroup? The humans had won a significant victory, but the aliens were known for their adaptability. They would learn from their mistakes and come back stronger. The time to prepare for the next phase of the war was short, and the survivors had to move quickly. The human fleet gathered for its next mission, a direct assault on one of the alien strongholds. The plan was risky, but they had no choice. They could take out one of the alien empire's largest military bases. They could deal a massive blow to the enemy's ability to fight. The plan was set in motion, and the human ships began their journey into the heart of alien space. As the fleet moved toward the enemy stronghold, the survivors knew that they were walking into a trap. The aliens would expect them, and the odds were stacked against them. But humanity had come so far, and they would not back down now. They had come to reclaim their place in the galaxy. They were prepared to give everything for that cause. The battle that awaited them was fierce. The alien ships were massive, and their firepower was overwhelming. The human fleet fought with everything they had, using their smaller, more agile ships to outmaneuver the larger enemy forces. The humans fought not just for survival, but for something greater, the hope that they could rebuild and return to their home. In the heat of battle, Riley's ship was hit. The damage was severe, but he refused to retreat. He could feel the weight of the mission on his shoulders. He had led his people this far, and he would not stop now. As the alien ships closed in, the humans pressed on, fighting with everything. They had Arya's ship, alongside the rest of the human fleet, pushed forward. The enemy stronghold was within reach, but the cost was high. Many ships had been lost, and many of the survivors had been injured. The battle raged on, and for every step they took, it felt like they were losing more ground. But the survivors were determined to press on. They would not be defeated, not now, not after everything they had been through in a final desperate push. The humans reached the heart of the alien stronghold. The weapon that had once been a beacon of hope was activated again. The light from the weapon lit up the battlefield, blinding the aliens and giving the human fleet the chance it needed. The alien defenses faltered, and the humans broke through. The stronghold fell. The alien empire, though still powerful, had lost a key part of its military force. The humans had made a statement. They were no longer scattered to the stars. They had found each other, they had fought back, and now they were on the road to reclaiming their place in the galaxy. But the war was not over. There would be more battles, more sacrifices, and more challenges. But humanity had shown the galaxy that it could not be broken. They had faced the darkness and had emerged stronger, ready for whatever came next. The survivors, though battered and bruised, had proven that their spirit could not be crushed. They had taken the first step toward a future where they could rebuild and thrive again. The reckoning had come, and humanity had risen to face it.